What's up, guys? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our videos. Also, make sure you follow us all over social media so you don't miss any of our content or show announcements. Really wanted to spend some time on the Phoenix Suns today, so let's get into this. A little bit different Phoenix Suns team than we saw last year. They're 16th in offense, 6th in defense, 8th in net rating. Couple of big differences. Last year, they were 14th in assist percentage. Only 64% of their baskets were assisted. This year, they're up to 5th. 69% of their baskets have been assisted to start this year. A lot more driving kick. Their three-point volume is way up. They're contending better physically. Last year, they were 20th in defensive rebounding. This year, they're 6th. Cleaning the glass has a stat they use to track transition defense called points added per 100 possessions. It's basically a combination of frequency and efficiency with transition. Last year, they were 18th. This year, they're 5th. So they're contending better in the physical parts of the game. Big part of that is Ryan Dunn. Have you guys seen, we'll start with you, Carson. Have you seen anything with the Phoenix Suns that leads you to believe they're a different team that will be more successful this year than they were last year?
Yeah, I do think that they're better than last year. And the biggest reason for that in my eyes is that they've found a couple of two-way role players. That was the struggle all of last season, right? It was, all right, are we playing these guards who can actually shoot the ball but really struggle to defend? Or is it like, well, we got to put Josh Okogie out there because we know athletically he can hang. But like they didn't have dudes who were capable on both sides of the ball. And I think now they've got some wings who can really defend out there, playing more minutes, who have also been capable offensively. Ryan Dunn, to me, was the key to this season for the Suns. This is what I said in the preseason. They have to play him, and he has to be good, and he has to hold up an offensive level close to what we saw in preseason. I guess maybe I shouldn't even say that because he was shooting like over 40% from deep on crazy volume, but he has to play at a level that solidifies that he has taken an offensive leap from the player we saw at Virginia, who was the worst offensive player drafted in the first round, probably, right? And a complete non-shooter who had no touch even from the free throw line. But what we saw in preseason, I thought, yeah, I think that something close to this is reasonable to expect from him. And I think that he's delivered on that. Last couple games, he hasn't made a shot, but like we've seen him have some really good offensive performances, and he was the best defensive prospect in this class. I mean, what he does athletically on the perimeter is outstanding. We've seen him throw at some premier perimeter players, if it's LeBron, if it's Harden, if it's Luka, and really hold his own in those matchups. He's also the best shot blocking wing in this class, and he's just exactly what Phoenix needs, right? They need athletes. They need defenders. And when those dudes can play offensively, like he's attempting 9.5 threes per 36 minutes and he's making 36% of them. That's a huge win for them. That's the exact sort of role player they're looking for. And Royce O'Neal has been better this year. He's filling his role at a higher level. Obviously, they made the move for him mid-season last year, and he had a really bad season versus Minnesota, but he's shooting the ball really well and he's defending well right now. So I think that they've addressed their biggest need in terms of role players. And when you get O'Neal out there or you get Dunn out there instead of a Tyus Jones or a Bradley Beal and you're playing them alongside Katie and Book, you've seen really good results. I think that their starting five as it's configured is not a good cohesive lineup. I think that they have some redundancies and some very obvious limitations there, but it's not like they're strictly playing their starting five 25 minutes a night, right? This isn't Denver. So they're getting some better role player contributions. Their offense, I think, is pretty similar to last year. I do think it's slightly better, right? I do think there's a bit of a stabilizing element with Tyus Jones. You mentioned the assist percentage. I do think the ball movement has been a bit better. I like the three-point volume going up. I do still think they have some of the same limitations. They are still dead last in the league in restricted area makes. And compared to the great offenses, they just don't have that sort of overwhelming advantage creator, right? They can get in the drive and kick game, and they have a lot of offensive skill out there, but that rim pressure aspect, just having a guy who every time down the floor gets you a great shot, is something they do not have. They do rely a lot still on Katie and Book being incredible shot makers and Beal being a really good shot maker, and they can be a good offense like that. They've been average offensively so far this year, but they can be a good offense like that, and I expect them to be. It's just really hard to be a great offense like that, and hopefully they keep the three-point volume up, because that was another component of this last year, is they weren't getting shots at the rim, and they weren't getting a high percentage of shots from beyond the arc. And then you're just living in the mid range. And that's just a numbers problem. That's a math problem for you, no matter how good your shot making from KD and Book is. But what's been encouraging is how great they've been in the clutch compared to just the complete disaster they were last year, right? Turnover machine in clutch situations. They've been awesome. That's where they've been winning all their games. They're 5-0 in clutch games this year, and that's against a lot of good teams. Some of that is just KD heroics, but that's encouraging. I do think that they're better than last year, and to me, their ceiling is about how much they can continue to get these athletes and these defenders on the floor, because I think that that's where we need to see improvement from them compared to last year, is really on the defensive end. And in terms of physicality and toughness, I mean, they just got smacked in the mouth. They got bullied by Minnesota. The offense struggled, and we saw, again, the lack of rim pressure, right? The lack of high-end athleticism, advantage creation against a super athletic defense that was bringing a ton of pressure, and they were able to kind of suffocate even these really skilled ball handlers. But the defense is where I really hope to see improvement from Phoenix. And I think that we have seen some. Like I said, I don't like the actual starting five. I think that lineup struggles to defend. I think they struggle to rebound. I think it's silly that they promised Tyus Jones a starting spot. And if they were going to do that, I think that they probably should have sent Beal to the bench, just so, again, you are able to get a better athlete and defender on the floor. And I do think that having Nurk and Plumlee eating up all your center minutes does limit their defensive ceiling. They've improved, but it is tough when you have that sort of limitations at the most important defensive position. And alongside O'Neal or Dunn or whoever you're playing big minutes or starting, like, you are still going to have a small guard in Tyus Jones or Bradley Beal. Book and KD are solid defensively, but we don't consistently see them buy all the way in on that end. Like, I think they have the potential to be a good offense. I think they have the potential to be an above average defense. And I also think that this West is a bit more vulnerable. Like, the depth is crazy, but Minnesota's not as good as last year. Denver's not as good as last year. Dallas, to me, is clearly beatable. Like, I think that this Phoenix team can win a series in this West. They might be able to go further than that. They might be able to win 2 series. I'm not really seeing a gap between some of the teams and them where I did expect to see a gap. And early in the year, when a lot of teams out West have just underwhelmed, Phoenix has been the one team that's soaring. I mean, I think there's obviously a massive gap between OKC and them, but I do think they're better. I was low on how much they could really improve this offseason, just with some of their fundamental core limitations and lack of roster flexibility. And I don't think that they've moved mountains in terms of how I viewed them, but it's definitely been encouraging. And I am higher on them now than I was preseason.
Yeah, I mean, that's the measuring stick for this year, right? It's all about, can the Suns win a playoff series? They got demolished by Minnesota. I have been encouraged, and it does start defensively. I think we've seen more buy-in with Coach Bud, and, Nurk and Plumlee have their, physical limitations as like centers, but I think they've played hard. Like, I'll give Nurk some props. Like, I've liked how Nurk's trying out there. He's like moving in the pick and roll. He's trying to contest shots, right? Like, obviously, there's limitations athletically with what he can do, but I've been impressed there. They're really good at turning defense into offense when they can get stops. This was the #1 transition team in basketball last year. They're #5 again this year. They have been better in the fourth quarter. They had that huge comeback win against Philadelphia. I blinked. I couldn't believe the Suns had come back and won that game. KD had 15 points in the fourth. They had that 21-point comeback versus the Clippers. So I do think you're seeing a feistier, a hungry team, a team that is, again, I hate always saying this, but they are playing harder. I think you are seeing that with Phoenix. They aren't melting down in the fourth. I think I'm higher on this offense a little bit more than you, though, Carson. It is because of that high volume of threes. This team was 25th in three-pointers attempted last year. They're 11th this year. They were 20th in three-pointers made last year. They're 7th right now. All of last year, the Suns had 23 games where they made 15 or more threes. That's just 28% of their games. This season, already, they've had 4 games where they've made 15 or more threes. That's 57% of their games. It's 4 of 7 thus far. And so they're on pace to do it in 47 games this year. If they can keep up that kind of three-point volume and playing hard defensively, it does make a meaningful difference in how this swings games. I agree with your fundamental flaw for this team, Carson. There's nobody that gets downhill and exerts a ton of pressure on the rim. but I think they can still be a really good offense with this kind of star power and this three-point shooting flanking them. They made 9 threes against Portland in the third quarter, and that just completely shut them. I get it, it's Portland, but they completely shut them down. That was something that last year's team wouldn't have done at all. And they've had individual games that they've survived their stars not playing well. And I think that bodes well for the playoffs as well. Against Philadelphia, Book goes 3 of 18. They mount that 21-point comeback against the Clippers without Bradley Beal on the floor at all. So they've got star power. They've got improved three-point shooting and depth. They've got improved defense with better coaching. Yeah, I think this team can win a playoff series. I don't know if I'd take them to the Western Conference Finals. That's a little much, but I do think this team can win a playoff series. I've been really impressed by the Suns. I was really low on them like you coming into the year, but I do feel a little differently about them now.
I think it's been really funny to see some of the narrative stuff coming out of the way this team is covered. Like there's a lot of attributing Tyus Jones with the success of the team here in the early going, which is like doesn't make any sense to me. Statistically, they've been way better when he's been off the floor. Coming out of that series with Minnesota, the obsession with the idea of like them needing a point guard to me was silly. Because it's like, okay, you're losing because you're getting manhandled, not because you're because you don't have a point guard. And like, yeah, do Beal and Booker and KD need to handle ball pressure better and get the ball up the floor and get into their stuff? Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. Like that's on them. But like being like looking at that situation and being like, okay, option one, we just do a better job not pissing down our leg when someone picks us up full court. And we devote our resources towards bigger athletes that help us win these really physical games. Or option two, let's have Tyus do it. You know, like it's confusing to me because like, you know, just look at their data. Like the guys that have been leading to the most success on the floor have been Royce O'Neal, Ryan Dunn, the guys that are big physical defenders that can knock down a wide open catch and shoot three. And like, look, do I love this team build? No, because like, I think it's really hard to win without a center in the NBA just because like size and physicality and the ability to defensive rebound is important. And the Suns have been negative in their centerless groups so far this season. But like right now, if I was like picking a lineup to go down with, if I was the Suns, it'd be Beal, Booker, KD, and it'd be Ryan Dunn, and it'd be Royce O'Neal. Those are the guys that I would want to go down with. Those are the guys that give them the best chance to compete physically. I think that's the encouraging part. Getting a full season of Royce O'Neal, adding Ryan Dunn to this group, I think that's what causes them to have a better defensive rebounding track record than they do this year, to have a better transition defense than they did last year, to be a better defense overall than they were last year. And like Ryan Dunn is like not just a good defensive player, like he's one of those guys where like I get nervous when people run action on his side of the floor that he's just going to blow it up. Like he like the dude is an absolute monster. I loved the quote from KD about there was a quote from KD that like one of the things he loves about Ryan Dunn is that he fouls a lot. And it's actually been really funny to me because like this is something I thought with my young players all the time, the ones that I coach, like when I'm playing one-on-one with them, when I just decide to step in for fun and play king of the court, I'm like, why are you scared to guard me? Like, yeah, I get it. I'm your coach. I get it. I'm bigger and stronger than you, but like compete here. Show me what you got. And there have been a handful of guys that have come through the program where it's like, they don't care that I'm older and bigger and stronger and more experienced. Like they try, they foul me, they get physical. And I'm like, yes, this is awesome. You're competing, you're showing fight. And like, it's like I had a comment after the Russell Westbrook clip that I showed of him guarding RJ Barrett. Someone was like, he committed 3 fouls on that possession. I'm like, maybe. But you know what the best defenders do? They foul and they get away with it. That's like what they do. That's part of basketball. That you need to get. The Suns needed to get meaner and more physical, and I feel like they're meaner and more physical this year. And I think that that's something that makes them better. I think when push comes to shove on the offensive end of the floor, it's on KD, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal to navigate ball pressure, to get the defense into rotation, to make the right reads, to trust each other, to drive and kick. I think that is. If we're looking for something that Coach Budenholzer has really affected, you know, Frank Vogel is as good of a defensive coach as he is, and I think he's an underrated defensive coach. Frank Vogel has always had been way behind the times on the offensive end of the floor. And I think that structure and that prioritization of those driving kick possessions has been really good for them. I'm with you, Carson, in your outlook on the league. Like, to me, Oklahoma City's on a clear tier above the rest, but you could talk me into any of those other teams winning multiple playoff series. So that could be Oklahoma City versus Phoenix. That could be Oklahoma City versus Dallas. It could be Oklahoma City versus Minnesota, Oklahoma City versus Denver, Oklahoma City versus the Lakers, Oklahoma City versus Golden State. Any of those teams, to me, I could see meeting in the conference finals, just because there's just a whole, it's so funny because we were talking earlier about the difference between the two conferences and how there's only two teams over 500 out east right now. But it's like, it's a whole lot of mediocre off the top. There's like 2 elite teams, and then there's like 18 teams, you know what I mean? And like, there are a couple of them that are playing better at the start of the season, right? Like, Phoenix is playing better, Cleveland's playing better, Golden State's playing better. But like, when push comes to shove and we get to April and it's time for a 7-game series, there's not really a whole lot of separation taking place among that group, in my opinion. And so to me, it's like, what it comes down to is who can, among that group, who can from day one start a training camp, address the things they need to address, and build those habits and all of that attention to detail so that they can be a sharper team when they get to the end of the line. And to me, Phoenix is one of those teams that's taking the right approach here in the early part of the season.